Sorry, I had a phone call in between. So here we see that the Pharisees, they were extending one side of the law and demanding people to obey their extended version of the law. And Jesus, on the other hand, was trying to prick their conscience by extending the people's side of the law on adultery and murder, and telling them that even if they have an adulterous thought or a murderous idea and they call somebody a fool, they are adulterers and murderers. It is in a sense a false equivalence, but Jesus was using it. Jesus was stretching those particular commands, such as the command on murder and the command on adultery, to tell the Pharisees what they were doing about the rest of the commands related to idol worship, commands related to Sabbath laws. So Jesus was, in a sense, using their own measure against them. So that is what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 6, that the measure that you use is being measured back to you. So you use these kind of false measures. And therefore, Jesus is extending the other side of the law and says, now what? Will you be able to obey this extended command? If not, then why do you want to force other people, like the tax collectors and sinners whose names you strike off from the book of life, to obey these unobeyable things which God has not commanded? Now, there are still some people who are confused about this, and they would say that, well, the origin of sin is in heart, and therefore a Christian needs to be obeying Matthew 5, 6, and 7, every hyperbole, literally. I'm not saying that the origin of sin is not in the heart. I'm not also saying that heart should not be clean or you should not have pure thoughts and pure ideas. I'm saying that the purpose of Jesus using those hyperboles in that section, Matthew 5, 6, 7, is not to cleanse people's hearts. Of course, it is to point out to people that sin begins within humanity, within human hearts. But still, the real point is to convict the Pharisees of their false measures that they were using against others. That is the purpose of Jesus in those hyperboles. Because see, Jesus himself did not obey those hyperboles literally. If Jesus meant that if you call somebody a fool in anger, you would be roasted by God in hell, then Jesus should not have called his contemporaries, the Pharisees and law teachers, fools in anger in Matthew 23. So Jesus did not intend those hyperboles to be obeyed literally. And Jesus used those hyperboles to convict the Pharisees, to prick their conscience, to help them understand how they were adding things to the law and making it difficult for other people who are different from them. So here, in a similar manner, Jesus is using the criteria suggested by the Pharisees of righteousness. The criteria here is related to how you are supposed to welcome a guest. If you have a guest at home, you need to offer them water to wash their hands and feet. It is a sign of respect, and you should hug them, give them a kiss as a sign of your affection towards them, and give them oil to anoint their head. So all those things are kind of manners in their society, and they should keep these things. These are traditions of their elders that have been passed on to them, and they need to do it. And if people don't do these little things, the Pharisees were saying that, well, because of your kind of people, the Messiah is coming and the return of God's presence into the temple is being delayed. Our deliverance is being delayed. We are still in the exiled condition. But now, Mr. Pharisee, Mr. Simon, you yourself have not obeyed the criteria that you suggest for others. You are saying to others that you have to do these ceremonial washings correctly, but you have not done it. But look at this woman. She has done it. Now, this is the part of that surprise, that irony. Jesus is saying that, Pharisee, you think you are righteous. Pharisee, you think you will be there in the age to come. Pharisee, you think your name is already there in the book of life because you have written it in your book in the synagogue. But look at this woman. Whatever you were supposed to do because you are a member of the kingdom, you didn't do. And she has done in your place. So Jesus is preparing a ground to declare the forgiveness for this woman so that the Pharisees won't be able to refute Jesus's arguments. So as I said, Jesus has a unique style. Jesus' style is to make his opponent say the truth. So his opponent is convinced about the story that the moneylender would certainly love the person. The person who got more sins or more money, more debt cancelled, will be the person who would love the moneylender more. So Jesus is already prepared, using that particular story, a kind of a setting so that the Pharisee would understand what Jesus is coming to. So by that story, Jesus is saying that I am the moneylender, I am God. And both of you, this Pharisee and this woman, both of you are indebted to me. And I have the option to forgive both of you. I have the option not to forgive either of you. And I choose to forgive. But who do you think would love me more? Of course, the person who has been forgiven more, according to that story. So you find fault with this woman and you say she is a sinner. She's not saying you are a sinner. And we all agree she is a sinner. She's a bigger sinner. And her sins are forgiven means she would be loving me more. And it has happened already. Mr. Pharisee, can't you see? You did not love me. When I came into your house, you did not welcome me respectfully, affectionately into your house. But look at this woman. What you did not do, she has done. And not only has she done it more. This theme you would find throughout Luke, where Luke would bring some outsider, somebody who may be a prostitute or somebody who may be a Samaritan, somebody who may be a law-breaking tax collector, who would do more righteousness than somebody from the Jewish religious sect, like the Pharisees or the lawyers. So this happens in many other places, like, there is an interesting place where a rich young ruler comes and he wants to follow Jesus, and Jesus says to him, well, there is one problem, you have to leave your wealth behind and follow me. And then he cannot do it because he is attached to his wealth more than he is attached to eternal life or life in the age to come. So Jesus' disciples asked, then who can enter? Like this rich guy, this young guy, and he's very righteous also. He should be the part of our kingdom family. They all wanted him to be included so that he could perhaps sponsor their works. But now Jesus has refused him in a sense, like, kind of blatantly, that you have to leave all your wealth, give it to the poor, and then come. And it's a command that he will not be able to keep. And everybody can agree, like, this is too much of an ask. But he leaves. And then somebody else comes. And that is a tax collector called Zacchaeus. So immediately after the story, we see Zacchaeus. And Zacchaeus was living only for money. He didn't want any eternal life, anything. He was ready to do sin, ready to allow the Pharisees to cut his name or strike his name off from their religious books of life. And he was ready to compromise every blessing from God in order to win favor of the Roman Empire and to get more money so that he could be living in luxury. Such a guy, he sees Jesus. And he's so moved by Jesus' presence and his reception of him, despite the fact that Jesus is risking his own membership in the synagogue, that he decides to give up his wealth. Something that is impossible with people, or from people's perspective, is happening here. Something that the rich young ruler was supposed to do, who knew the law and everything and was keeping everything. An outsider, somebody who has been thrown out of the synagogue, cast off the synagogue, this Zacchaeus, who has no idea what is written in the Torah, who doesn't want to obey the Torah willfully, is doing. He is doing more than what the Pharisee would have done, like what that rich young ruler would have done. So not only is he ready to give his possessions if he has extorted from somebody, he's also giving half of his possession to the poor without Jesus even demanding him. He is doing much more than what that man was ready to do, even with Jesus' command. So this phenomenon, this pattern you can observe where, you would see the religious people being reluctant to obey, and there are people who are less religious, people who are outsiders, outcasted people like a Samaritan who would be willing to do more righteousness than the religious people. And it happens again. You will see that there were 10 lepers who came to Jesus. 9 of them were Jewish lepers. They all went to the temple and they gave their testimony and they got the testimony of the priest and they were healed. They joined their society. They never returned to thank Jesus. Only one returned to thank Jesus for the healing, and that too was a Samaritan. A Samaritan, who is an outsider, was more righteous than those other lepers. And you will see in Jesus' Good Samaritan story that there was a Levite, there was a priest who refused to help a Jewish man in trouble, being robbed and attacked and left half dead on the way. And the Samaritan man did more than what the Jewish priest or the Levite would have done. He not only takes him, dresses up his wounds, he also is ready to pay more on his way back to the inn where he has given this man or entrusted this man to be taken care of. So that level of generosity, that level of righteousness, that level of love for others is exhibited again and again in Luke's gospel in particular by people who are outsiders. So the religious Jews are not doing it, what they ought to do, and outsiders are doing more than what they are supposed to do. And here we have a sinful woman who is supposed to do nothing. She's supposed to be sinful and maybe come and beg for forgiveness. That's all what she's supposed to do. But she is not only admitting her crimes, her sins, she's not only humbling herself, she is doing more righteousness than the